Have you ever noticed that between the noise of your thoughts, there is a quiet space, a pause, so subtle that most of us pass it by without ever realizing it is there? We spend our lives rushing from one idea to the next, one breath to the next, one desire to the next, and yet, hidden in the tiny spaces between them, lies something far greater than we could imagine. In that silence, in that still point where nothing is happening, a doorway opens, a doorway into peace, into clarity, into creativity, into the deepest truth of who you are. What if I told you that this gap, this simple pause, is not empty at all, but filled with infinite possibilities, waiting to be discovered? What if inside that stillness is the secret to healing, to balance, to the freedom you have been searching for? Stay with me, because in this journey, we will step into the mystery of the gap, and together we will explore how it can transform the way you breathe, the way you think, and the way you live. When you sit quietly, when you close your eyes and simply notice what is happening inside, you will soon realize that the mind is never still. Thoughts move like clouds drifting across the sky. One moment you remember something from yesterday, the next you imagine a plan for tomorrow, then another thought interrupts, and another, and before long you feel pulled in many directions at once. This movement of thought is so constant, so familiar, that we begin to believe it is who we are. But if you look closely, if you listen carefully, you will find that there are tiny breaks, small pauses, a space between one thought and the next. This space is not obvious at first. It is delicate, like a whisper in the middle of a storm. Yet the more you pay attention, the more you discover that it is always there, patiently waiting. This pause between thoughts is what we call the gap. And the gap is not just silence, it is not just emptiness, it is a presence that cannot be described by words. Imagine watching the waves of the ocean, one wave rising, another falling. And for a moment, before the next wave appears, there is still water. That still water is the gap. In the same way, when a thought ends, and before the next thought begins, there is stillness in the mind. If you can touch that stillness, even for a few seconds, you step into a space that is free from judgment, free from fear, free from the pull of the past or the pressure of the future. Many people believe that meditation is about forcing the mind to stop thinking, but that is not true. You cannot command the mind to stop in the same way you cannot command the ocean to be calm. What you can do is notice the natural rhythm, the natural rise and fall of thoughts, and allow your awareness to rest in the pauses that appear on their own. This is effortless meditation, and it is the beginning of discovering who you truly are. When you first begin to look for the gap, you might not notice it. You may sit in silence and feel only the endless chatter of the mind. That is normal, that is natural. But if you stay patient, if you keep observing without judgment, something remarkable begins to happen. You will notice that every thought eventually dissolves, every image fades, every story your mind tells has an ending, and in that ending, there is a breath of quiet. At first, the gap feels too short, too fleeting, but with practice, you will find it stretching, becoming more visible, more inviting, like a window opening onto a vast landscape of stillness. Inside this gap, You are not limited by who you think you are. You are not defined by your name, your history, or your worries. You are awareness itself, pure and untouched. This is why spiritual traditions across the world speak of silence, of stillness, of emptiness. Because what they are pointing to is not nothingness, but fullness. It is a fullness that contains everything, a stillness that holds the potential for all creation. Think of it like the pause between notes in music. Without the pause, the melody would have no shape, no rhythm, no beauty. The silence is as important as the sound, for it gives the music meaning. In the same way, the gap between thoughts gives your mind clarity, gives your being a chance to rest, and allows you to feel life more deeply. When you live only in the noise, you miss the hidden music of your own soul. But when you mind the gap, you begin to hear it clearly. As you continue to notice the gap, you may feel a sense of peace washing over you. A peace that does not depend on circumstances. A peace that is not shaken by the ups and downs of life. This peace is not created by effort. It is discovered by letting go. The moment you stop chasing thoughts, stop fighting with them, and simply rest in the space between them, peace rises naturally, like the sun at dawn. And once you have touched this peace, even briefly, you will never forget it. It becomes a reference point, a reminder that beneath the turbulence of the mind, there is always calm water. Some people ask, what is the value of finding this gap? The answer is simple. In the gap, you are free. Free from stories of who you should be, free from memories that bind you, free from fears of what might come. In that moment of stillness, you are pure awareness, limitless and unbroken. From there, healing can happen, creativity can flow, insights can arise, and love can blossom. Everything begins in the gap. So the practice is simple, though not always easy. Sit, breathe, watch your thoughts. When one thought dissolves, do not rush to the next. Instead, linger gently in the space that remains. Do not grasp it, do not force it, simply notice. The more you notice, the more natural it becomes. And over time you will find that the gap is not just in meditation, it is in every moment of life. When you pause before speaking, when you take a breath before reacting, when you stand still and simply observe, the gap is there. The great gift of the gap is that it teaches you presence. It reminds you that life is not only the endless stream of doing, but also the infinite depth of being. And when you live from that being, when you remember the gap in the middle of your busy days, you live with more clarity, more compassion, and more freedom. This is the invitation, this is the path. Not to escape your mind, but to discover the quiet space within it. The space that has always been yours. The space that holds the secret of who you are. Take a moment now and notice your breath. Inhale gently. Feel the air move through your nose, filling your lungs, expanding your chest. And exhale, slowly letting go, releasing the air back into the world. This rhythm, this rise and fall of breath has been with you since the day you were born. And yet, how often do you truly pay attention to it? Most of the time, it goes unnoticed, automatic, silent in the background of your life. But hidden inside this rhythm, inside this constant companion, is a secret. Between your inhalation and your exhalation, between the rising and the falling of your breath, there is a pause. That pause is not just an empty stop. It is the same mysterious gap that lives between your thoughts. When you focus on this pause, something begins to shift. At first it feels like nothing, a brief moment, too subtle to matter. But if you rest your awareness there, if you allow yourself to sink into that still point, you discover a doorway into pure consciousness. Just as the pause between thoughts reveals stillness, the pause between breaths reveals presence. It is a natural meditation requiring no effort, no struggle. All you need to do is notice. The beauty of using the breath to discover the gap is that the breath is always with you. You may not always be aware of your thoughts. You may not always be able to control the noise of the mind, but you can always return to the breath. The breath is an anchor, grounding you in this moment, guiding you back home. Each inhalation carries you inward. Each exhalation lets you release. And the pause in between connects you to silence. Many meditation traditions speak of this pause as the still point of life. It is not about holding the breath, not about forcing or straining, but simply about noticing the natural pause that happens on its own. When you inhale fully, there is a moment where the body rests before releasing. When you exhale completely, there is a moment where the body waits before receiving again. These moments are sacred. They are the rhythm of existence, the balance between effort and surrender, between life coming in and life going out. If you begin to meditate on this, you will notice how calming it feels. The mind that once raced begins to soften. The heart that once hurried begins to slow. The body that once carried tension begins to relax. In the pause, there is nothing to do, nothing to achieve, nothing to chase. There is only being, and being is enough. Imagine now that you're sitting by a lake. The water moves with the wind, ripples rise and fall. But in the early morning, when everything is quiet, the surface becomes still. In that stillness, the lake reflects the sky, the trees, the mountains, everything around it. Your breath is like that lake. The inhale is the ripple rising, the exhale is the ripple falling, and the pause is the still water in between. In that stillness, you reflect the whole universe. When you bring your awareness to the pause, something deeper awakens. You begin to feel connected, not just to your breath, but to the pulse of life itself. The pause between breaths mirrors the pause between day and night, between seasons, between the cycles of nature. Everything in existence has its rhythm, and in every rhythm there is a gap, a moment of stillness where renewal begins. By honoring this pause, by resting your awareness there, you align yourself with the natural intelligence of the universe. Some people find this practice easier than observing the gap between thoughts, because the breath is more tangible, more physical. You can feel it, you can sense it in the body. As you practice, you may begin to notice that the breath and the mind are linked. When your mind is restless, your breath is shallow. When your mind is calm, your breath is deep and slow. By focusing on the pause between breaths, you calm both mind and body, gently bringing them into harmony. Over time, the pause becomes more than just a moment of stillness. It becomes a portal. In that silence, you may feel peace. Yes. But you may also feel creativity stirring, intuition whispering, healing unfolding. It is as if the universe itself is alive in that gap, waiting for you to notice, waiting for you to receive. Think of how many times in life you rush past this pause. You finish an inhale and quickly exhale. You finish an exhale and quickly inhale. Always moving, always filling the silence. But when you learn to rest in the pause, even for a few seconds, you begin to live differently. You learn to pause before reacting in anger, to pause before speaking words you might regret, to pause before making choices that shape your life. The breath teaches you that wisdom lives in the pause. This practice does not require a special place or a long time. You can do it now, wherever you are. Simply close your eyes for a moment. Breathe slowly. Notice the gap between the inhale and the exhale. Stay there. Feel the stillness. Do not hurry to the next breath. Do not rush away. Just rest. Even a few breaths practiced in this way can shift your entire state of being. As you deepen this awareness, you begin to sense something profound. The pause is not separate from you. It is you. It is your pure awareness, your true self, your eternal nature. It has been with you from the very first breath, and it will remain with you until your last. To discover it now, to live in it now, is to taste freedom. So let this be your practice. Whenever you remember, return to the breath. Follow it as it rises, follow it as it falls, and rest in the pause. The more you do this, the more natural it becomes, until one day you realize that the pause is always present, even when you're not looking. It is the ground of your being, the silence behind every sound, the stillness behind every movement, the gap that holds the mystery of life itself. There is a deeper mystery hidden in the gap, a truth that goes beyond silence, beyond peace, beyond even the comfort of stillness. When you rest in the gap, when you allow yourself to truly sink into that quiet pause, you are not only touching calmness, you are stepping into the field of infinite possibility. This may sound abstract, but if you stay with it, if you listen carefully, you will see how simple and how powerful it really is. And every experience you have ever known begins in potential. Before a thought becomes clear, before a sensation becomes strong, before an image appears in your mind, it exists as possibility. All of these possibilities rest together in the gap. Just as in physics, where energy exists in superposition before it becomes a particle, your experiences exist in superposition before they become your reality. That means in the gap, everything is present, waiting to take form. Every idea, every feeling, every creation, every choice you might ever make lives first in that silent space. When you sit quietly and you notice the pause between breaths or between thoughts, what you're touching is not just stillness. You are touching the womb of creation itself. This is the divine matrix. the invisible source, where healing, insight, creativity, and transformation are born. And here is the great secret. If you place a subtle intention into that space, if you gently release a wish, not with force, not with demand, but with quiet surrender, the gap begins to work for you. Think of it like planting a seed in fertile soil. The seed is small, fragile, almost invisible, but the soil is alive, rich with nutrients, full of potential. When you plant the seed and then let it rest, nature takes over. The soil nurtures it, water feeds it, sunlight awakens it, and slowly the seed grows into a tree. In the same way, when you drop an intention into the gap, the infinite intelligence of the universe begins to nurture it, to shape it, to bring it into form. You do not need to control it. You do not need to chase it. You only need to trust the process and allow it to unfold. This is why the gap is called the field of infinite possibilities. In that silence, everything is possible, nothing is excluded, all potentials exist together. If you carry fear into the gap, fear can grow. If you carry love into the gap, love can blossom. That is why awareness is so important. Because whatever you place in that stillness, whether knowingly or unknowingly, is nourished by the creative force of life itself. When you begin to meditate in this way, when you not only notice the gap but also honor it as a sacred field, you start to see changes in your life. Ideas come more easily. Creativity flows without effort. Healing happens in unexpected ways. Synchronicities appear, and life feels less like a struggle and more like a dance. This is not magic, this is not superstition. It is simply the natural intelligence of the universe responding to the seeds you plant in the soil of silence. Imagine, for example, that you are carrying stress. Your mind is heavy, your body tense, your heart unsettled. In the gap, you pause, you release the thought, and you allow the stillness to hold you. In that silence, stress begins to dissolve, the body begins to self-regulate, the heart begins to soften. Or imagine that you carry a longing, a dream, a vision. You enter the gap, and instead of clinging to the dream, instead of forcing it, you simply drop it like a pebble into the still water of your awareness. The ripple carries it, the silence receives it, and in time, the universe responds. This is how healing arises, how creativity blossoms, how new possibilities come alive. Because in the gap, everything is connected. Thought is not separate from breath. Breath is not separate from sensation. Sensation is not separate from imagination. All are woven together in the stillness, all entangled in the infinite fabric of consciousness. This is why meditation can feel so profound. When you enter the gap, you are entering a field where everything is one, where the boundaries dissolve, and where life reveals its wholeness. It is important to remember, though, that you cannot force the gap to give you what you want. Just as you cannot force a seed to grow faster by pulling at it, you cannot demand results from the silence. You can only plant with sincerity, with humility, and then let go. The letting go is essential. The gap responds to surrender, not control. It works in harmony with you, not under your command. The gifts of the gap are many. Infinite creativity, infinite healing, infinite regulation of the body and mind, infinite peace that surpasses circumstances, infinite correlation where events align in ways that surprise you, infinite evolution where life unfolds into higher levels of awareness. All of these flow naturally when you learn to rest in the silence and honor it as sacred. When you realize this, meditation is no longer just a practice. It becomes a relationship with the living field of creation. Each time you close your eyes, each time you notice the pause, you are entering into dialogue with the universe. You're saying, here I am, I trust, I let go, I allow. And in return, the universe whispers back in ways both subtle and grand. Sometimes it whispers as insight, sometimes as opportunity, sometimes as healing, sometimes as love. So the next time you sit in silence, remember, the gap is not nothing. It is everything. It is alive. It is creative. It is infinite. And when you learn to live from that place, when you remember to mind the gap not only in meditation but in daily life, you discover that life itself is not random, not chaotic, but deeply intelligent, deeply connected, and deeply supportive of your highest unfolding. When you begin to notice the gap in meditation, you start to realize that it is not confined to the practice itself. The gap is everywhere, in every moment of life, quietly waiting for you to notice. Just as it appears between thoughts, just as it rests between the inhale and the exhale, it also appears in the pauses of your daily actions. Before you speak, there is a moment of silence. Before you react, there is a space of choice. Before you step forward, there is a pause where intention is born. These gaps are just as sacred as the ones you discover with your eyes closed. And when you learn to honor them, you begin to live more consciously, more freely, more in alignment with your true self. Think about the times in your life when you have rushed without pause. Words spoken in anger, decisions made in haste, choices taken without reflection. These moments often leave behind regret or pain or unnecessary struggle. But when you remember the gap, when you give yourself the gift of a pause, even if it is only a breath, wisdom enters. The gap becomes a space where awareness flows in, where patience softens your response, where compassion can rise. This is why presence is so transformative. Presence is not just paying attention to what is happening. Presence is the ability to live in the space between what was and what will be, to rest in the stillness of now. And the gap is the doorway to that presence. Each time you pause, you reconnect to it. Each time you pause, you touch the ground of being that is not shaken by circumstances. Imagine yourself in a moment of conflict. Perhaps someone speaks harshly to you. Perhaps life does not go the way you planned. Instantly, the mind wants to react, to defend, to push back. But if you remember the gap, if you take one breath before responding, everything changes. That one pause gives you room to choose, room to act with clarity instead of impulse, with understanding instead of anger. That one pause can turn conflict into connection, resistance into acceptance, tension into peace. The same is true with joy. when something beautiful happens, when laughter fills the room, when love touches your heart, the gap is there too. If you pause, if you breathe into the moment, you stretch it, you deepen it, you let the fullness of life wash over you. Joy is not just in the event, but in the stillness that allows you to truly receive it. The gap is also the place where creativity flourishes. Writers, musicians, artists, and thinkers all know this, even if they use different words. When you struggle to solve a problem, when you push and force your way forward, the answer often hides. But when you step back, when you pause, when you let the mind rest in stillness, suddenly the insight appears, almost as if from nowhere. This is not coincidence. It is the natural intelligence of the gap revealing itself. And healing too is found in the gap. Your body has an extraordinary ability to restore balance, to repair, to renew. But stress, busyness, and constant thinking keep it from doing its work. When you pause, when you rest in the gap, the body begins to regulate itself. The nervous system calms, the heartbeat slows, the breath deepens, and the natural processes of healing awaken. This is why people often leave meditation feeling lighter, clearer, more alive. It is not because they did something, it is because they allowed something greater to happen through them. What makes the gap so powerful is that it requires no effort, no complex method, no special belief. It is already here, already part of your experience. The only task is to notice it, to give it attention, to trust it. And the more you notice it in meditation, the easier it becomes to notice it in daily life. Eventually, you begin to see that the gap is not something separate from you. It is you. It is your awareness, your presence, your very essence. This realization changes how you live. Instead of being swept away by every thought, every fear, every desire, you begin to rest in the space that holds them all. Instead of being trapped in the stories of the past or the worries of the future, you begin to live in the freedom of now. You begin to see that life itself is a dance between movement and stillness, between sound and silence, between action and pause. And when you honor both, you live in harmony. It is no accident that wisdom traditions have always spoken of silence, of stillness, of emptiness. They are pointing to the same truth. Not that life should be silent all the time, not that you must escape the world, but that you must learn to honor the pause within it. In doing so, you find balance, you find clarity, you find your way back to yourself. So as you move through your day, remember to mind the gap. When you breathe, notice the pause. When you think, notice the space. When you act, notice the moment before action. These are not small things. They are the path to freedom. They are the path to awakening. They are the reminders that beneath all the noise, beneath all the movement, beneath all the stories, there is a silence that is infinite, creative, and unshakable. That silence is your home. That gap is your doorway. And the more you live from it, the more you will discover that life itself is not something to chase, but something to receive. That peace is not something to achieve, but something to uncover. That freedom is not somewhere else, but here, now, in the pause, in the gap, in the eternal presence of who you truly are. If this journey into the gap has touched something within you, take a moment to pause now and simply breathe. Feel the stillness that has always been here, waiting for you, guiding you, holding you in silence. Remember, every thought will pass, every breath will change, but the gap remains infinite and alive, ready to renew you each time you notice it. I invite you to carry this practice into your daily life, to pause before reacting, to breathe before speaking, to rest in stillness before moving. And if you found peace here, if you felt even a glimpse of freedom, then I encourage you to share this video with others who might need that same reminder. Subscribe to this channel so you can continue walking with me on this path of meditation